Okay, so now we're going to look at adding fractions with the number on the bottom being different. Okay, so the bottom number we call the denominator. Okay, and when we've got different denominators, we have to be really careful when it comes to adding. Okay, so here we've got 3/4, and if you think about, like, I've got a round cake here, this is split up into quarters, yeah? Well, 3 of them will be, if I take 3/4, it'll be that, wouldn't it? 3 slices there, okay, practically all the cake. And then I also then eat 2/5 of a cake. Now I'm gonna have to go to a different cake, okay, to get 2/5. You'll see why now in a minute, because clearly if you think about it, I'd have to go to a different cake. So there has to be more than one cake on the table, because if I want 3/4 and 2/5, then that's, when you combine them, that's going to be more than a whole cake, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to need, there's going to need to be more than one cake on the table for me to be able to have this. Okay, and also I need to look at 2 separate cakes, because this cake has been split up into quarters, into 4 pieces, whereas this cake has been split up into fifths, into 5 pieces. So the fraction sizes are different, aren't they? Okay, they are different. So you've got to be really careful how we add these now to get the answer. And the way to do it is as follows. Okay, it's really simple. What you do is, okay, we take the 3/4 and the 2/5. Okay, we'll write it out like this. And what we'll do, in order to add them, we're going to change these fractions. Okay, we're going to scale them. Okay, we're going to scale them up in order to be able to add them. Okay, and in order to add them properly, and as I said, we're going to scale them, we need to be able to scale them so that the denominators are actually the same. And the way to do that is really easy, because what you do is, you look at this fraction, okay, and you multiply it by whatever's on the bottom of that fraction. Okay, so this fraction here, I'm going to multiply by 5. Is that okay? And this fraction, you look at what's on the bottom of this fraction, which is a 4. So you multiply this fraction by 4. Is that clear? So quite simply, you're sort of crisscrossing on you, vice versa. So you take this fraction, and we're going to multiply it by whatever's on the bottom of the other fraction. So we're going to multiply this by 5. And then this fraction, you're going to look what's on the bottom of the other fraction and multiply by that. So we're going to multiply by 4. So how do we do that? Well, it's really easy, because what you do is, if I'm going to multiply this fraction by 5, well, I can multiply the bottom by 5. Okay, so 4 times 5 is 20. And I'll multiply the top by 5. So I get 15. Okay. Do the same then to the second fraction. Okay, multiply by 4. So I'm going to multiply the top by 4 and the bottom by 4. Okay, so I usually start with the bottom. So if I times that by 4, I get 20. Times the top by 4, I get 8. Now, look at what we've got. We've now got 2 fractions which we can actually add, because the bottom numbers are the same. Okay, whenever the bottom numbers are the same, it's really easy to add the fractions. Okay, and we're allowed to do this. Okay, because what I found here is equivalent fractions. That fraction is the same as this fraction, and this fraction is the same as this fraction. Okay, ultimately they are the same. I just scaled them up by multiplying the bottom and top by the same number. So I've multiplied this by 5 to get this. I've multiplied this by 4 to get this. What do I do to finish off? Well, I add the fractions, just like I did in the first video. Add them. And if you think 15/20, add 8/20. That's like having a cake cut up into 20 pieces. And I take 15 of them. And then I come back later. And then I take another 8. Okay, so in total I've taken 23 pieces. And the fraction size is 20. Okay, so my answer is 23/20. Okay, and we leave it like that for now. Okay, you might notice and think, well, that number is bigger on top. And yeah, it is, isn't it? Okay, and that's what we sometimes get. But you just need to appreciate then, if the number on top is bigger, that means then we've actually eaten more than a whole cake. We've actually eaten a whole cake and a little bit more, okay, which is what this sort of demonstrates up here, okay. But leave the answer like that for now, okay, and in the work we're going to do, right, and quite simply we're adding the top numbers, 23, and the bottom number tells us the fraction size,